Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Celebration Space. My name is Kaylee Phelps, and today we are talking about ways to cut your event budget. So as we know, we are in the middle of a global health crisis. This is being filmed in November 2020. So finances are tight for a lot of companies and just for a lot of people. So I'm going to try to keep this pretty general, try to see if I can make it apply to quite a few different things as far as events go, from weddings and conferences and maybe even holiday parties, depending on what you're doing. So I'm going to dive right into it. I'm going to start with 5 things that are really going to cut your budget as much as possible. And then I'm going to go into some other things that I think that you should keep in mind as you go. And I'm going to make sure I have my coffee over here too, and I have my little notes. So number 1 is time. So maybe that seems obvious, maybe not, but if you normally run a 3-day conference and you are trying to run the same conference with $50,000, $100,000 less, the first thing to do is to cut down on your time. This is also something that if you're throwing a personal party, this also is going to help. Number 1 reason, because people have expectations the longer that they're engaged. So the longer they're engaged, they're going to expect more food, they're going to expect entertainment, they're going to expect different things, especially if it's in a more formal setting of, you're at someone's, conference and you want to sit down and have meals and have more networking and maybe have an open bar and do all of these things, when maybe your actual goal as an event organizer is to provide content. Other people might be looking at it for more of social interaction, so it could become a little bit dicey. The more you have people involved, you have, the longer they have expectations about it. Oh my goodness, Lyman just gave me the nicest compliment that I am great at bowling on a budget, especially for events. So I appreciate that, Lyman, very much. So number 1 thing is cutting down on your time. The less time you have people engaged, the less you have to, do things for them that are going to cost money. The second thing is food and beverage. Of course, that's something that if you signed a contract, you're probably going to have a minimum that you have to reach. But if you can plan some of your content around different parts of the day, not planning things right at lunch, or just providing 1 meal per day rather than all 3 meals per day, really looking at what you can do. Also looking at, obviously right now we're not doing a ton of past hors d'oeuvres or anything like that. Just looking at what you can do as far as smaller meals, doing something more dessert focused or more hors d'oeuvre focused rather than providing a full meal. Breakfast is always going to be cheaper than dinner. Lunch is normally going to be cheaper than dinner depending on the venue that you're at. So just really taking a look at your food and beverage budget, how long you're keeping people engaged, first of all, and then second of all, how often you are going to feed them and what that's going to look like. So the third thing that also kind of goes with that, time thing where I said the longer you have them engaged, you're going to have expectations of food and entertainment. So my third thing, of course, is entertainment. So like I said, you want to keep your content king and not have to do as much entertainment. If you are doing something, you can kind of try to go wedding style where you provide some sort of music and have maybe contests. I've run nonprofit events where they do contests for, dancing contests or costume contests or things where you can have your audience bring the entertainment themselves rather than bringing in a band or a comedian or doing something like that. So seeing what you can do for entertainment and keeping your content top of mind, depending on, obviously if you're running an event that's like a comedy show, you can't cut the entertainment, but seeing what you can do in between, maybe having a volunteer MC rather than hiring an MC, maybe having a volunteer DJ rather than hiring and outsourcing a DJ. Next, we're going to talk about staff and trying to find, like I just mentioned, this is perfect with in line where I was going is seeing if you can have volunteers over staff members. So especially if you're traveling for your event, staff costs can add up very quickly because you're paying for flights, per diems, hotel nights, you know, making sure that everyone is just getting paid for their time as well. So just keeping in mind, especially if those people are hourly rather than salaried, and also seeing maybe how you can cut down on the number of activities or number of things going on at the same time, which requires less manpower. Because as we know with food and beverage and entertainment, with staff and manpower, it costs money to pay people to do things. So just keeping in mind that if you can get more volunteers or on-site help, maybe doing something like TaskRabbit or having people that are more local help you with doing things that are freelancers rather than flying people out, and trying to cut down on your travel costs as much as possible, trying to cut down on those manpower costs as well. All right, so we're moving on to number 4, which is decor and audience items. So decor is something that everyone loves, walking into a really beautiful room, right? So you want to see flowers and, you know, lights and music and linens and all of these things. Whereas that's something that really is optional. If you need to feed people, you need to have, you know, you need to have place settings, but you don't need to have the top of the line. You might be able to cut down on your floral. You might be able to choose objects or do some of your own decor rather than doing that. Along with the audience items are swag bags and printed things. So it costs a lot of money to get a really beautiful, glossy, printed catalog of events. So maybe you do something different where it's, you know, just something printed out and put on each PlayStation, or maybe you email most of the events, or maybe you have an app that you've already paid a contract for that you do everything through there. Trying to cut down. You can also kind of frame it. I've seen a number of events frame it, whether or not it's true, where they don't have as many linens or they don't do anything printed, to be more green for the environment. So it's kind of a double whammy where you're saving money for your budget, but you're also saving the environment from not having to wash as many linens or print as many things. So that is my number 5 tip. I was gonna say, I thought that I already said. So just to go back and recap, since I lost track, time is the first thing. So cutting down on the amount of time that you have your audience engaged. Your food and beverage, keeping in mind your minimum, and maybe providing some food and beverage, but maybe doing a cash bar rather than an open bar, stuff like that. Entertainment, trying to have your audience bring the entertainment themselves, or keeping your content king rather than trying to entertain with outside sources of entertainment. Staff and volunteers, trying to do more staff than volunteer, or more volunteers than staff. Geez, I'm all turned around this morning, but trying to do more volunteers than staff, and then also trying to keep your staff costs at a minimum. If you are doing this, which one of the ways to do that is to just have 1 or 2 things happening at a time rather than 3 or 4 things where you need to have staff members represented at multiple different locations at the same time. And then 5th are decor and audience items, so linens, floral, you know, programs, swag bags, all of that good stuff. And one of those things that I wanted to mention with that is maybe you look into getting a sponsor for those things. So you have a specific sponsor for your catalogs or your programs. Maybe you have a specific sponsor for floral or decor. Maybe you have a specific sponsor for your entertainment, things like that. Seeing where you can work in the budget and how you can get creative with that, and always trying to capitalize on your experience. So what I will tell you is that at most weddings, people do remember the food, the entertainment, and what everything looks like. So they might not remember the pacing as much. They might not remember that the wedding, you know, was 5 to 10 rather than 5 to midnight, things like that. Just trying to keep in mind what's going to be the most impact for your guest experience. Also, this is, of course, something that, you know, I talk about in every event video, keeping in mind your audience and your goals at the top of mind. So, and also any travel. So if you can keep things more local, especially right now during the global health crisis, that is more important than ever, and cutting down on your travel costs. And something that maybe we don't talk about enough in the event industry is your past precedent. So if you have normally run a 4 or 5 day conference and you're trying to cut it down to 2 days, how are you going to pack a punch in those 2 days to stand up to the precedent that you've already set in a 4 to 5 day event? How are you going to live up to the expectations that you've already set of maybe a returning audience? If it's a brand new audience, no one's returning, then you kind of have a clean slate. But if you are building upon an audience, if you are doing something, really keeping in mind the past precedent that you set, the things that people said that they loved more than anything that stuck out in their minds, and trying to at least fulfill your promises that you have set up beforehand on those different things. And then tracking everything. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I'm queen of a spreadsheet. I love a spreadsheet. Keep track of every little cost. You should probably be doing this if you have an accounting team. They will appreciate it anyway. Keeping track of your receipts, keeping track of what all of these things look like. I've talked about in previous videos before choosing a venue, looking at what the sales tax is, what your manpower costs are going to be, what different things are going to look like in that space. And so factoring in your sales tax, all of those things in your current location, but also factoring in what tipping and all of those things are going to look like in the space where you're holding your event, and potentially keeping your event just more small and organic. So rather than running any ads for costs to get your audience to your event, maybe keeping it more organic from an email list or from social posts, and keeping in mind that when people come and it's more organic, those are normally the people that are going to be there for your content rather than trying to, loop in a bunch more people to gain maybe more ticket sales up front, but then you have to entertain, feed, do all these things for all of these people. So I hope that this was really helpful and maybe can help you cut your event budget, whether you're doing a personal party or a wedding or, a bigger nonprofit or corporate event. So if you have any specific questions, of course, like I said, everything is pending your audience and your goals, trying to keep content king and keep your audience engaged. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, even if this is about webinars or anything of that nature. Please like, comment, subscribe, be all over the celebration spaces. We want to support you as much as possible. And until next time, enjoy celebrating today.